What's up, friends, and welcome back to my channel. For the past 2 weeks, I've had this pog-like looking thing stuck to my arm, and it has been tracking everything from my exercise and sleep to food and fasting windows. It's called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, and to say that this small device over-delivers on value and data would be an understatement. So in this first video of my two-part series, I'll be covering the very basics of what this thing is and how it works, why you would want to get one even if you don't have diabetes, the pros and cons of this device, and my biggest takeaway from using it. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My mission is to help you achieve success without sacrificing your health or happiness. I do product reviews weekly, so if you're into this, click that subscribe button and join the Type A tribe. So before we dive deep into the data, let's first talk about what is a CGM and how does this thing work? Well, very simply put, this is a device with a built-in chip that is constantly measuring your blood sugar levels 24/7. Now, at some point in your life, you've probably experienced a sugar high. Maybe you accidentally ate an entire Cinnabon by yourself, even though you said you were only gonna have one bite. But regardless, if you know what a sugar high feels like, well, then you certainly know what a sugar crash feels like. But prior to a device like this, well, all of that information was just anecdotal. But now we have concrete data to see what specific foods are doing to our bodies, and most importantly, how our bodies are able to process and handle those foods in return. Now, unlike a finger prick where you just get one measurement in real time, the CGM stays on you for weeks at a time. And as a result, you are then able to make bigger correlations around your glucose data and things like exercise, stress, and sleep, not just food. Before I cover why you might want to get one, let me answer some of the most common questions I've gotten about this thing so far. No, it doesn't hurt, and in fact, you don't even feel it going in. Applying the sensor was super easy and just took a matter of seconds. Plus, you sometimes forget you're even wearing the device because it is so lightweight. Yes, you can sleep and shower with it, no problem. Just make sure you don't keep the device in water for more than 30 minutes at a time. And the glue that they use to keep the sensor in place is super strong, so you really don't have to think about it falling off unless you accidentally bang into something really hard. So now that we've covered some of those common questions, let's move on to the why. And for this, I'm gonna be super broad and say it will actually vary for everyone. And I'll explain the reason for that. I'm a 31-year-old in relatively good health with no chronic disease or history of diabetes. And for the past 2 years, I've been tracking my sleep and fitness data religiously, but not so much my nutrition data. And so for me, a CGM was really that missing puzzle piece in my own personal quest to get a really full picture of my health. There are so many things I do, but how do I really know they're working? Is intermittent fasting really good for me? Does a high-fat meal spike my glucose levels? And what happens to my body when I go on a run? These were some of the questions I thought I knew the answer to, but wasn't 100% sure without the data. But now I have those answers, and I am so excited to share my big takeaways with you guys. And we'll get to that in just a sec, but I think the key thing here for people who are healthy, who are thinking about getting one of these devices, is that this is a great experimental tool. Food impacts every single person differently, and our long-term health is based on a number of factors, including genetics, but it's also based around what we're putting in our body every single day. And you don't know until you know, and you have the data at your disposal. And I think for someone with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, or who are pre-diabetic, the benefits of a device like this could be even more profound, especially if insurance can help cover some of the cost. So moving on to some of my surprising takeaways from this 2-week experiment and what you might also be able to learn from one of these devices. To start, on the days I did a lot of snacking in between meals, I saw that my blood sugar levels just continued to climb, and they never had a chance to come back down. On the nights when I ate a little bit too close to bed, it took hours for my blood glucose levels to drop back down during sleep. Now, in terms of exercise, well, this one was really surprising for me. I naturally thought that doing cardio would just automatically lower your blood sugar levels. And while it's true that it'll lower it over 24 hours, sometimes depending on the intensity, you might actually see a short spike in your blood sugar levels, and that was the case for me. And the reason for this is very likely due to the stress hormone adrenaline, which is just flooding your body with glucose for fuel. Now, the key thing you want to look for here is that you see a quick spike and come down from that high glucose level as a sign that your body is doing its job. Now, in the mornings when I did bulletproof coffee with some MCT oil and ghee, didn't really notice any big spikes, but I did see a spike when I added in some of my Laird Hamilton superfood creamer. And finally, let's talk about my high carb experiment. I've been following a pretty paleo, keto-ish diet for a while now, and I honestly have not touched fruit or potatoes in about 2 years. But since I have this device on, I figured it would be fun to experiment. So I did a day where I had an entire plate of blackberries for breakfast in the morning, followed up by a sweet potato in the afternoon. And no surprise, my blood sugar levels went through the roof. But here's the crazy part. They came down very quickly, and then they stayed very low for the next 24 hours. I mean, we're talking below average low. So low that the nutritionist at Nutrisense actually reached out to me to see if I was okay. And I admit I felt awful the next day. I had a headache and I felt nauseous, and it just reminded me of that damn keto flu all over again. I eventually normalized again after about 36 hours, but the results said a lot. My thought here is that my body just went into such a hyper glucose drive that when I fed it a high fat diet the next day, I think it just had a hard time processing a totally new fuel source. I'll do a little bit more research into this and uncover more of my findings and touch on stress in part 2. But for now, those were some of my big takeaways from using the CGM. So as we wrap up the video, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of this device and using Nutrisense as a company. So to start, I went with Nutrisense because of their very user-friendly platform. Not only is their app super aesthetic, but they just make it so easy to record your meals. And after you just snap a pic and log your meal, you can then go back a couple hours later and see how high that meal made you spike, as well as what your glucose levels look like 2 hours after the meal. Another pro of the app is that it auto records your exercise and sleep data. So that's one less thing you have to log. It actually pulls in all of your data from Apple Health, which is also synced to my Oura Ring. And if you don't know what your glucose levels mean, or you have a question about the device, you can actually DM the team straight from their app. And speaking of team, I was wildly impressed by the high-touch service that Nutrisense provides. On day one, you're given a designated Nutrisense nutritionist who is there to walk you through the next 2 weeks and answer any questions you have. Believe me, I had a lot of questions in my first few days, and my nutritionist got back to me with a very thorough response every time, and within a matter of hours. I've tried a lot of products, and sometimes it takes weeks for the team to get back to me. That was not the case with Nutrisense. And to me, this level of service makes the price totally worth it and is something that I really hope they continue as they start to scale. Now, on to the cons. Let's start with accuracy. Now, there are a lot of different CGM devices out there. The main players in the space right now are Dexcom and Abbott Freestyle Libre. Nutrisense, the company, uses the Freestyle Libre model, and I went with them because it was just cheaper. Now, Dexcom, on the other hand, is a lot more expensive, but it is pretty well known as being the most accurate CGM on the market right now. So if you can get a prescription for it and accuracy is your main focus, go with the Dexcom. But I still think you can get a lot of value from the Freestyle Libre, especially when it comes to understanding basic trends. But in terms of accuracy, yeah, this device was off by about 20 points in the negative direction as compared to when I did a fasted glucose test with my Precision Extra device. Wasn't a big deal. I had to manually calibrate the sensor, but just something to think about if you do purchase one of these devices. You're gonna wanna have some glucose strips handy. Another downside is the scanning. So it's not a perfect technology, and I did have several connectivity issues when trying to scan it with my phone. Now, while annoying, it's not the end of the world because the device does store your data up to 8 hours. And the final drawback is the price. It's $175 for a 2-week trial without insurance. Now, I personally think that the data you get from it and the service they provide is invaluable, but I get it. It's still a lot of money, and it certainly is not sustainable for me long term. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll probably start to see prices come down a lot as more companies come onto the market with devices like this. But for now, this price was honestly one of the best consumer prices I was able to find for a CGM. And keep in mind, this is actually Nutrisense's beta version. They're working on a number of software improvements and new hardware integrations. And so we'll see the company shift a lot in the next few years. But if you can't wait until then, I will certainly link to their company below. Again, I'm not affiliated, just a fan of the product, and I do think they offer a tremendous service. Now, there is so much more to cover, including stress and glucose levels, and my experiment with a new supplement called Pendulum, which I will be sharing with you guys in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for part 2. And if there's anything that you want to see me review in my next video, please leave a comment below, or you can always hit me up on Instagram at KatieTypeA. I'd love to hear from you, and let me know if there's any crazy trials you want me to do. And until then, make sure that if you're not already subscribed, click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you get notified each week when I drop a new video. And until then, I will catch you on the next one.